IELTScast, episode 31.
You're listening to IELTScast, the podcast that puts you in touch with successful IELTS candidates from around the world. Listen and learn as they explain how they achieved Band 7, 8 and even 9. Now, here's your host, Ryan.
Hello and welcome to IELTScast. Today I'm speaking with Madawa, an IELTS candidate from India. He's currently living in Ethiopia in the city of Dila. Madawa has scored a couple of very tremendous marks on the examination. He had an overall band of 8 with individual scores of 8.5 in listening and reading, a band 8 in writing, and a band 7.5 in speaking. And he's been kind enough to share a few minutes with us today, tell us about how he achieved these amazing scores. So hello Madawa, welcome to IELTScast.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Thank you for the flattering introduction. Anyway, I want to thank you, Ryan, for giving me this opportunity to express my opinions. First of all, let me introduce myself. I was born in India, and then I traveled around the world for studies and work. And currently, I'm working in Dilla as a professor. I'm teaching engineering subjects here. Mm-hmm. So let's just start it. Yeah.
Great, tremendous. And so I suppose all of those subjects are taught in English?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. And now, just so that we can provide everybody with a bit of an idea of who you are. So you were studying in the U.S. You said that you spent was it several years in Belgium as well?
I spent about 8 years in US, mostly studying and doing my research. Mm-hmm. And after that, I got a job in Belgium, so where I worked for 2.5 years. Since then, I have been working here for the last 3 years as an associate professor in mechanical engineering.
So now you have an extended relationship with the English language, it sounds like. So you've been living, working, studying in English-speaking countries, in other European countries. Let's talk a bit about your relationship with the IELTS. When did you first decide you were going to take the IELTS, and when did the whole process of your preparation for the IELTS begin?
That was almost 2 years ago when this was during my first year here in Dilla. I wanted to improve my standard of living, so I wanted to immigrate to Australia at the time. Mm-hmm. At that time, Australia seemed to be the only option where the immigration procedure takes place primarily based on the scores of your IELTS. So IELTS was not only mandatory. I realized that getting good score in IELTS like Band 7 and Band 8, it will boost your chances of going to successfully immigrate to Australia. Mm-hmm. So for that purpose, I focused quite a lot on I was not good with listening to start with, so that's where I started focusing. That it helped me in several different directions, I would say. Mm-hmm. First of all, let me start with how I started preparing. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I am always passionate about learning new things. Like I want to learn about the environment. I want to learn about the health. Anything that is related to science, ranging from astronomy, anything talking about new genetic research. Mm-hmm. So all these things, they come naturally. I find them naturally interesting. Mm-hmm. So I find these documentaries on topdocumentaries.com. There is a website, so you can go there and get these documentaries. They are from BBC.
And just let me ensure, so are these video documentaries?
Yes, they are video documentaries. Okay. And they are very helpful. I mean, whatever is your interest, it doesn't matter. You will be able to find a documentary of your interest. Mm-hmm. And the accents in those videos are quite similar to accents that you hear in IELTS examination. In fact, sometimes I feel like they are the same people.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I would say those are the best ways in which I have employed those ways, and they worked out quite well for me. And the second aspect is that I would recommend people going for the TED Talks. Are you familiar with them?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, you can choose your genre and you can choose your choice. Like if you're interested in politics, science, astronomy, you can choose your choice, and then it will categorize based on your interests, and then you will be able to listen to them. But what I recommend for the students who are taking the IELTS examination is to have a broad range of topics. I mean, even if you're interested only in health, I wouldn't say that you focus only on health. You maybe half of the documentaries that you watch maybe should be of your own interest, but just diversify a little bit.
Madawa, now let me ask you. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but when you're watching these documentaries, are you being active and taking notes and looking up new vocabulary and phrases that you come across?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
See, I would say I have never really come across a really difficult word that I need to look up in the dictionary. Even if they use a little bit complex word, I'm sure I will be able to make it up. But even if you are a beginner and if you are not at the level of band 7 or band 8, I would say that you should be able to follow the lecture, and you should be able to take notes. And the most important part, I would say, is that when you are actively listening, you will be able to pick up the colloquialisms. Some people who are from non-native speakers, IELTS is designed for non-native speakers, obviously. So colloquialisms are not built into many people's vocabulary. And the way you can build this up into your vocabulary is by listening to these videos, TED Talks and BBC documentaries actively, and take notes of those colloquialisms.
Yes, that's good advice.
Yeah, and then by incorporating them into your vocabulary, you should be able to do that predominantly in your speaking part, and you should also be able to use it, a part of it, in your writing.
Yeah.
And I would say I have listened to this amazing one TED Talk that had quite an influence on me. It's Ken Robinson. He has used such a complex vocabulary in his talk that I have used like almost 5 of the words in my IELTS examination.
Oh.
But for example, he said, we have to disenthrall our preconceived notions about education, and we have to embrace a new paradigm where children become active participants, and in fact they lead the classroom.
Okay, so what was the topic though of his talk though?
His talk was about that education is ruining the children.
Okay.
So his argument was the current system of education is not only bad, it cannot be improved, because it's the ladder is leaning against the wrong wall. So we have to change the whole paradigm of education, and he uses several different words in the TED Talk, and I would say that I was able to use those words, in those contexts, in my examination.
Okay, that's tremendous. So you were actively taking phrases that were used in these TED Talks, and then you were applying them to your own speaking.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
So you've talked about you watched the TED Talks. You gave us that great website, which I've written down here, talkdocumentaries.com. So maybe some people that are listening, go check that out. And I should also highlight that you pointed out the very important topic of making sure that you are versed in several of the different topics that could appear on the examination, not just a handful that you like or that you think are interesting. So it's a bit of, you got to push yourself to maybe get out of your comfort zone, listen to a few topics that you're not so familiar with, note the vocabularies, note the colloquialisms, and try to apply these to your own language.
In chapter 4, in section 4, most of the topics are based on science. If you look at section 4, most of the topics are of academic interest, where somebody gives a lecture. So most of these lectures are based on science, like whales or ships or astronomy. So whatever topic it is, most of them are related to science. So I would say if you are taking an IELTS examination, practice examinations on regular basis, and you are struggling with section 4, where you need to take notes continuously from question number 31 to 40.
Right.
If that is the area in which you are having trouble, I think then the TED Talks and the documentaries will be of the most benefit to you.
That's a good point. Also, I mean, as well, and this is just an obvious thing, is that they're both delivered as monologues.
Yes, they are. Yeah, they are both delivered as monologues, and the vocabulary is the same. The level of vocabulary is the same, and the accent, I would say, as I told you, sometimes it feels like the same person.
Mm-hmm.
So the accents are exactly the British accent,
Mm-hmm.
and you will be amazed at. Sometimes you will be able to guess some. I mean, I have been listening to a documentary. In the examination that I have taken like a week ago, there was something called hedonic treadmill. The speaker was talking about how people are being unhappy in spite of making a lot of money. So I have actually exactly listened to this kind of talk before. So it's almost like when I looked at the section 4, I see like, oh, okay, I know this topic.
Interesting.
So when I'm listening to that, so I know that I know a little of viewpoint of what the author is going to talk about. I mean, it helps a lot if you're familiar with the topic. And TED Talks are a great way in which you can get familiarized yourself with different range of topics.
Mm-hmm. It's a very good insight that you're sharing here. A very, very good way to prepare for section 4. I will just point out one thing. So people, now you're advising people to do more listening and to pick up the language, and that's tremendous. At what point do you think they should focus their attention upon listenings that are coupled with questions similar to those seen in the IELTS?
I would say for the last 1 month, you should completely engage a lot of practice tests, and make sure that you hit your mark. Like if you're shooting for band 7, make sure that you get at least 36 correct. So it depends on how much and how quickly you can learn. So I think I would say it depends on your already existing English capabilities, and you are able and how quickly you can learn, your ability to learn fast, and your willingness to invest a lot of time. And I would say that just be involved in English. I would say that talk to people who speak in English with your talk in English with your friends, and make friends who speak only English with you. Don't hang around just with your local people, where you communicate with you will be forced to communicate in your local language. And if you are talking in English with your local friend, obviously it is kind of frowned upon, and people actually don't like it. They feel like you are showing an attitude. So I think better. I mean, for example, I have a lot of trouble speaking in English with my Indian friends, because when I speak in English in India, the culture here is that you speak in English only when you are angry with them, only when you are trying to force something. So the culture doesn't permit a lot of people to communicate in English with another person who is capable of speaking English. So most of the time, you should actually look for people with whom you can communicate only in English, and make friends with them for the last 2 months before you take the IELTS examination. The best thing is to find another person who is also taking the examination with you. And that way you will be able to communicate, you will be able to conduct speaking tests with each other, and you will be able to bounce vocabulary of each other, and you will be able to be well prepared. And you should, as you have already mentioned in majority of your videos, I want to reinforce that speaking at least for an hour every day before you take the IELTS examination for a month. I mean, for the last 1 month, you should be able to actively speak at least for a couple of minutes on a given topic.
Very good advice, yeah. Now, I want to get your opinion on something. Everybody says to get a speaking partner and to work with a speaking partner, and you were pointing out that you can review vocabulary and these sorts of things. What sort of exercises, like exam specific exercises, could students run through to help them prepare for the exam?
First of all, I would say improve your vocabulary and make sure you're speaking in the right tense.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, non-native speakers have difficulty differentiating the past tense from the past perfect, and sometimes they don't properly use the future tense, and they have trouble, using conditional clauses
Mm-hmm.
and constructing compound sentences. I think most of these you will be able to pick up if you actually listen. Most of the sentences that they construct in these documentaries or TED Talks are complex sentences.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say if you are actively listening for information, you can pick up vocabulary, and tense. Speaking in the right tense is something that I would say it comes only by practice.
Mm-hmm.
And once you speak with another friend, you must record and make sure that you are speaking in the right tense.
I agree.
For
Yes.
example, if a question says, if a question says, describe the museum that you have visited in the last 5 years
Mm-hmm.
or so, whatever. So you have to make sure that you use the past tense.
Mm-hmm.
And you should be able to speak about about all the existence. About your experiences. You should use the past tense,
Mm-hmm.
and while at the same time you should be able to use the present tense for.
Mm-hmm.
Facts like the museum is located,
Mm-hmm.
and the museum is equipped with a lot of modern sculptures. Whatever.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure that you use the tense properly,
Mm-hmm.
and if you practice properly with another friend, you will be able to get the tense correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And once you get this tense, vocabulary, as I told you, it cannot be built overnight.
Mm-hmm.
You should be able to. There are some ways in which I did build up my vocabulary for the IELTS.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is a Wordmaster.
Wordmaster.
It's a it's a list of 500 words,
Mm-hmm.
but I would say that all the 500 words may not be useful.
Mm-hmm.
Only a few of them will be useful.
Mm-hmm. And sorry,
and-
is this an application or a website or?
It is an application that you can purchase
Mm-hmm.
online. Wordmaster. It's a couple of two people who talk to each other, and they come up with 5 words every 5 minutes. It's a list of 100 different recordings,
Mm-hmm.
and each recording contains 5 words, and each word will have a meaning. Like extricate, for example,
Mm-hmm.
extricate and intricate, and expedite. So these are the words that you can actually use in your examination.
Mm-hmm. But sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, some of the words I find interesting. I found them interesting, and I have recorded in my book, and I was able to incorporate them into my writing and also into my speaking. So I would say this did help me quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it depends on your personal choice. You can use any vocabulary building exercise that you want, and that will boost your lexical resource score in both speaking and writing.
But does this application, does it provide the option to see the words used in context, or is it more or less just a large vocabulary list?
No, it will give you a context. For example, the word absolve.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody who is absolved, somebody is exonerated from the blame. So what is the difference? It will explain the difference.
Mm-hmm.
So, and for example, the other word that I did use is from this vocabulary is articulate.
Mm-hmm.
And enunciate. So these are the words that you can use.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you are describing a teacher, for example, my teacher is very good and he was always patient. Whenever we have any question, he tries to elucidate the point very clearly.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the words are, you can associate the words with some people in your mind.
Right. Okay.
Like if I want to talk about my friend, I can talk about he is extremely scrupulous individual, and scrupulous means obviously he is trying to do everything perfectly. He's putting a lot of effort into it. So you can think of words that describe a person and there are a lot of there is a good chance that in the examination you will be asked to describe a person. So you can use a bunch of these words to describe that person. For example, if I am describing my brother, I recently picked up this word called adrenaline junkie. So I would say something. So describe a trip that you are taken with your friend, let's say. So I will try to incorporate this word into that. So I'll say I have taken a trip. My brother is always pushing me to do adventurous things. He wants me to go mountain climbing. He wants me to do this. He is kind of an adrenaline junkie, really. So I will try to see this kind of words. It will impress the examiner, because it is likely that the examiner may not have heard this kind of word from an IELTS exam from a test taker.
Right.
So it will create a very good impression if you are able to use some words that he has never heard from.
That's true. Yeah. Instead of this robotic language that they likely hear time and time again, you're using something that's quite original as far as an IELTS candidate context is concerned. So that's good. Yeah, I bet that is impressive. I wanted to ask you, Madawa, a moment ago you said something about recording new words and the context that they are used in. You said my book. What is this book? Can you tell us about it?
In my book,
you're talking about your book. You maybe a notebook or something.
Yeah. I just see, for vocabulary, I maintain a notebook where if I find a new word or something interesting, some colloquial language, so I try to record it, and I will. So I keep a small book, about 20 pages, which is filled with words like this, along with some sentences and context in which I can possibly use it in the examination.
Yeah, and I agree. With that strategy completely. I think students are best to carry some journal with them that allows them to review new language that they see. It's true for all of us, and it's not just when you're learning a language, but when you want to remember something, when it's fresh in your mind, you think, oh, I'll definitely remember this, later today or whatever, and then later today comes and you completely forget, and then the next time you come across that word or phrase, you may not recognize it, or at least you may recognize it, but you don't remember what it means or that sort of thing. But if you have it in your notebook, and at the end of each night you're reviewing the language that you've learned during the day, it's a nice little way to just reinforce what the new phrases that you've come across, and to help encourage you to use them in your future language as well. So in this journal that you were keeping, in addition to the vocabulary and the colloquialisms and these sorts of things, what other bits of information were you noting?
Just majority of the time when I'm preparing for the speaking test, for example, I usually recommend this following procedure. For a speaking test, speaking part 1, I will have a lot of freedom in choosing my words. For example, I have recently listened to your trip to Canada, where you have performed an IELTS.
The mock speaking.
Mock speaking, yes.
Yeah.
So you said that you came from small, charming community. So that charming is a great word. So I would say, if somebody the examiner asked me, where did they come from? I come from a small, charming community called Dilla, which is about 300 kilometers, and people are extremely friendly and inviting. So I was able to speak at length using some of the words from your documentary, from your video. So I will be able to do that if I listen to a lot of other people who has taken the IELTS examination. I will be able to incorporate majority of their words into my language. And also, when you were talking about this personal touch, made me feel like I was an approachable person. Do you remember?
Yes, I do.
You may not remember. You do remember. Okay. Because I probably have listened to that recording more than you have. So.
Well, I don't know about that, because I don't know if you recall, there were 2 versions of that recording. There's another version that you can repeat after me, and I must have spent 4 straight days splitting up the audio file in a way where it wasn't clicking so much. And so I had to listen to that file quite a bit as well. So I remember actually quite a bit of what was said. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, most of the words, the colloquialisms that you have used in that are quite phenomenal, and that's exactly what I want to do. When I go into the examination, I want to make sure that I use some words that the examiner hasn't previously heard.
Right.
And I'm absolutely sure that if anyone puts enough effort into it, they will be able to come up with a decent amount of vocabulary to incorporate and to incorporate into part one of their speaking. Maybe not so easy into part two and part three, because you probably will be pressed for time. But part one, you should be able to build up your own vocabulary, practice these answers, where you're from, where do you work. For example, if somebody asks me where I work, I say I work as an associate professor. I'm in charge of organizing collaborating research. Majority of the times, I initiate staff meetings which catalyze a lot of postdoctoral research opportunities.
Okay.
So I was totally prepared for what I was about to say.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's a perfect example of somebody. I think the whole strategy, the whole idea of trying to predict the types of questions that you're going to be asked, instead of frantically thinking, oh, what am I going to do? Well, there's a lot you can do. You can predict, and there are several questions you're going to be asked. Like you pointed out, you're definitely going to be asked about your educational history, your career, what it is you're doing now, where you live, about that place. Maybe some of your personal interests, hobbies, a lot of these things, and you can, of course, you don't want to create a script and kind of recite that sort of script, but you can definitely pull together several useful phrases and even organize it in your mind. What you're going to say first, what you'll say second, and these sorts of things. And as you work on it and practice it comes out very naturally, and it is natural after a while because you've worked on that part of your language so much.
Yeah, it doesn't look artificial at all. I mean, first of all. In the beginning, when I was trying to put these phrases into my speaking, I was a little bit afraid that they may sound artificial. But when I recorded them, I realized that they sounded natural, and it made more sense, and it made me sound like a better speaker. So I would say that whatever words, you have put on 18 words, 18 different words, all the different words. I probably could recall about 15 of them.
Oh, tremendous.
So I would be able, afford my university, my grade scores in IELTS afforded me an opportunity.
Were you the guy did you post that as a comment to the video? Was that you?
No, I didn't.
Oh, sorry. Okay, there was one person, I thought perhaps it was you, that in response to that video as a comment, they used all 9 of those words in a couple of sentences, just to describe their approach to the language, which was kind of funny.
I have to personally thank you, because most of the words that you posted there, they are very normal, and they can be used in any speaking test, for example. And if anybody is taking IELTS examination, this is what I recommend. There are 18 words that Ryan has posted in his website, and please go through them and make sure that you use them in every single. In whatever way you can, make sure that you can create a bunch of sentences with them. Embrace is some word that you can very easily use for a lot of different contexts. So a lot of words, I would say, they are very applicable to IELTS. So these 18 words are a must learn, I would say, and not just learning the meaning of it, but being able to write it in 4 or 5 sentences, each word 4 or 5 sentences. And I would also say try to put it into your speaking, at least in part 1, where you'll be able to use some of these words and put the example that I've given before, catalyze. So similarly, I have already in my mind, I have a vague idea of how to put and pull those words into my vocabulary, and without sounding too artificial. And it should be natural at the same time. It should be a substitute for a word. But IELTS gives you some latitude, at least in part 1. So you will be able to incorporate majority of these words if you are good, and not just Ryan's words. There are a lot of words like that.
Now, you had already started to segue into writing, so maybe we can talk about that a little bit. You scored a band 8, so I'm very interested to hear about your process, because, as you know, most candidates, and some candidates try for more than a year to cross that threshold into band 7. Yet you were able to get yourself all the way to band 8. So just tell us about the process, about the way you engaged the examination. What do you attribute this band 8 to?
I would say to get band 8, I did not actually prepare properly. I would say that my preparation was way below par. I was not even familiar with the word cohesion. When I have taken the examination a year and a half ago, I have never seen any of the videos. I have never actually followed or listened to. I have never actually read an exam sample. It was almost like a month and a half preparation, and I focused primarily on listening and reading only. So my band 8, I would say it was not a true representation of my cohesive writing. I improved after that. So when I have taken this examination a year and a half ago, I was not using phrases like firstly, secondly, or trying to relate an example to connect the example to the thesis. I was not doing any of this. I was trying to answer the question and trying to use proper grammar and good vocabulary.
But you must have had some sort of central direction, theme, progression throughout the different paragraphs. Firstly, did you separate the you must have separated the essay into several paragraphs?
Yes, obviously I have given. I used to do it like an introductory paragraph and then give two body paragraphs and then a conclusion. That was my standard procedure. But I would say that it is not a great way to organize a paragraph. I would say after I have listened to your writing videos, I would say that I have been consistently hitting band 9, because most of the problems that I faced earlier before I have taken examination just a week ago were the problems with coherence. And it was not something that comes naturally. It needs practice. So I would say that if you have a structure in mind, for example, I actually, for writing, I have incorporated certain vocabulary. For example, if you're writing an argument essay, corroborate is a great word to use to support an argument. And
a vast virus database has been updated.
On evinced is something that says conclusively prove. There are some words that another colloquial phrases, I think, school of thought. Another school of thought maintains that. So while you're talking about two sides of an argument, you can say, while some people argue, another school of thought maintains.
Yes, absolutely. That's great.
So you can say, you don't want to say they argue and they argue, not the same word. There are certain words that people, that can be used to replace the word argue, because argue is we use the word too much in an argument essay. So you have to come up with synonyms for that word. And similarly, when you are trying to connect your example to your thesis, the other word that you can use is embody. One of the words that is listed in your 18 words, I think. I don't know if it is.
Yes, I do believe that is one of them. Yes,
it is one of them. And you can also this exemplifies another word. And similarly, if you look at some of the synonyms for this word, embody or incorporated, not incorporated, sorry. Similarly, it reflects it can be. This example clearly reflects the idea, or clearly purports the viewpoint that. So similarly, you can use the vocabulary to connect your example with the original thesis. This is the only way in which you can have some some preconceived words. I mean, some pre-existing words in your mind. You can go with this preparation. Like you can just pounce upon it. Like you don't even have to think about it. They are right on top of your head, so you can use them directly.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
And in the final paragraph, when you are making a recommendation, which I would say is better than making a prediction, because when you're making a recommendation, you would have more scope to use your vocabulary. For example, when you're making a recommendation, you can say is it okay for I'm giving you an example. Is it okay for languages to die out and lot of people are afraid that their local language is dying off and they have to prevent their language from extinction. So what is your viewpoint? So I argued that in my essay, in my practice essay, I argued that languages should die out. Everybody should be able to communicate with each other. We are living in the 21st century, and it is a shame that human beings, being so intelligent, are unable to communicate with each other. So I argued along those lines, and in the end, I said that we have to give up our parochial views on what language should be, and we have to disenthrall our preconceived ideas and notions of language and embrace a new paradigm where language is seen only as a tool for communication between two people.
Oh, that's tremendous. And you've taken what is essentially a very simple idea and you've decorated it with words, and you've done it with grammatical accuracy. And I'm sure, as we were saying, the examiner, they definitely picked up on that and awarded you accordingly.
Yeah. So what I usually do when I try to write, when I begin the essay, you recommend that I create a background statement and a general background statement, right?
Yep.
And a detailed background statement. So what I do is I generally start with, it is an undeniable fact that, and then I state something that is related to it. So even I'm hitting the ground hard while I'm starting.
You know what? Yeah, that is interesting, because when you say that phrase, it is an undeniable fact that you've already created an agreement between you and the reader, right?
Yeah.
So right from the get-go, you're already. I'm assuming this is so an argument essay you were talking about. So right from the get-go, you're already creating this. Okay, I am with you. We're both seeing something the same way, and I think that helps to convince the reader of your position, which is something else that I think I don't know whether the examiner will award marks for this, but I think the ability to convince the reader of a position is the examiner will consider that good form. So if you start with that and then you work your way towards a thesis, which is your opinion that you're hoping you will convince the reader of by the end of the essay, I think that's a good and very healthy pattern to follow. It sets up a very agreeable sort of situation, agreeable circumstance within agreeable context, let's say, within which the reader is reading your work.
And another important point while writing is making sure that you don't use the word I. This was one of the mistakes that I did when I had taken the test earlier. So now I don't use the word I anymore. I never use it. Like, even if the examiner asks you, give your personal opinion, I try to word it in such a way that the word I doesn't come into the picture, except when, if you're asked to discuss both these views and give your opinion. Only in that situation I use the word I, and I use the word I with a complex vocabulary too. After critically examining both sides of this argument, my personal sentiments are on par with the idea that phrase also I have taken from your.
A lot of it. These phrases are versatile, and just using the phrases doesn't mean you're being robotic at all. I think some people need to get that out of their mind. If you start to use them, accurately, it just becomes a part of your language, just in the same way it is a part of my language, is a part of the Queen's language. It's not some sort. Sometimes people worry that it's some sort of hack or some sort of cheat. But it's not. You can have these phrases in your vernacular and then pull them out when you need them, and it'll be perfectly fine. It's a perfectly accurate way to approach the question and approach the essay.
Yeah, and See, for a non-native speaker, majority of the time when you are trying to construct a paragraph, most of the words they cannot really come into place right away like a writer, like Shakespeare. So we need to have some phrases in our vocabulary,
Yes.
and we have to go prepared to the examination. So we are not English experts; we are native speakers. So we need to accept that, and we need to be able to develop these words. And when you're practicing, make sure that you use them in your mock essays.
That's very good advice.
Yeah. And also, I would say that when you're writing, when you're taking general examination task 1, you make sure that you have good adjectives to describe an object. Like, for example, most of the time, the question will be like, you forgot something somewhere. You want your friend to pick up something. So you can say majority of the time you forgot your laptop. My laptop is like this. It's like this. It's like this. It's beautiful. It's decorated. So you can think of a range of ways in which you can describe an object, describe a situation. For example, if the situation is very bad, you can say, please get me out of this sticky situation. Just incorporate the basic vocabulary. Like, I was offered this job. This job was amazing, so I quickly jumped at it. So you can use this these kind of words to show that you are not using a routine vocabulary. You can use an advanced vocabulary by using some colloquialisms.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that you can learn by reading good exam samples. And for general reading, I would say if you manage to read like 50 of them, and then make sure that you jot down the vocabulary and just structure it like Ryan suggests. I am writing to explain so and so. I am writing to complain about. So and so, and then the body paragraph, and make sure that you decorate the body paragraph with a decent amount of vocabulary, and make sure that you use the right tense.
Absolutely.
For part 1 of general reading, you need to have good grip on adjectives, like something that has an emotional value to me because it was a special present. So something like that. So you can think of different words that appeal to you, and then make sure that you can use them on a regular basis in your general task 1 writing. And I would say that there are a lot of if you look at previous exam samples that are band 9, you will be able to jot down a few of them, a few of the phrases or colloquialisms that you can very easily incorporate into your own examination.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that looking at model responses is healthy. There had been a bit of discussion online, regarding how helpful these strategies are. I mean, I think they're extremely helpful because they show people that are studying for the IELTS how to use, like you were mentioning before, certain phrases in context. And I think that the more that you're exposed to that, it is tremendous. I mean, it's just going to show people more and more how to use these phrases properly instead of people trying to put the phrases together with individual words. I mean, that never ends up well. So,
yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as far as examination itself is concerned, I have a few some tips that if somebody is taking the examination for the first time, I want to give them some advice.
Please.
If you're taking listening examination, for example, if you're taking if you have taken a lot of mock tests already in listening, then you probably know that the most difficult type of questions to answer in IELTS examination, listening part, are the ones that has multiple choice. The reason why I think this is true is that when you're having multiple choice, you're actually not listening for one particular kind of information. For example, if there is a fill in the blank, you know what kind of answer you have to look for, you have to listen for. But when you have when there is a multiple choice question, then the reader implies that. And there are three options. So you should be able to grasp all these 3 options before you. So you have to simultaneously listen and read at the same time, which could be quite a challenge. So at least this was when I was practicing, this was the most difficult part for me.
Right.
So and if there are multiple choice in in section 2 of the examination, I would say once they give the booklet to you, turn to section 2 and try to see what the questions are.
Mm-hmm.
I would say this strategy works if you have decent amount of memory.
Mm-hmm.
But I would ask anybody to exercise caution before taking this approach, because sometimes you may actually miss out on the important part of listening.
Mm-hmm.
You should never do that. What I generally, I'm very comfortable with the repeating part. Like, first of all, there will be an example every time you sit an examination. There will be an example, and there will be the same repetition. Like for the first 90 seconds, you will not be required to actively listen.
Mm-hmm.
You agree with me?
Yes, I would agree with you. It is very straightforward and typically very simple fill in the blank questions where you're and it's usually something like information about a hotel or information about a person or an order they made at a company or something, and there are some numbers, there are a few one word answers. You're right. It's very straightforward.
It's like taking a dictation. Yeah, you don't even need to pre-read the questions. I mean, at least it helps to read. I mean, I'm not denying the fact that it doesn't help.
Yeah.
I'm not denying the fact that it does help. It does help, but those 90 minutes are so valuable that you are better advised to use it wisely elsewhere. What I mean is, if section 2, if you have good memory, if there are section 2 questions, and there are a lot of multiple choice questions in section 2, 11, 12, 13, 14 are multiple choice questions. So you probably could read them, even though now they say turn to section 1. You don't have to turn to section 1. Nobody is going to monitor you. You can look at section 2 or section 3, whatever you like. Mm-hmm. So once the booklet is in your hand, make sure that you go through the multiple choice questions. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that way you can highlight different parts, and then you look for those, you listen for those particular parts. Mm-hmm. I think this strategy will work well because section 1 is quite elementary for majority of the people, and this 90 seconds, I think you will always be pressed for time. Mm-hmm. In IELTS, in section 3 or section 4, where there is an academic discussion, where you have to choose between Mary and Mark are discussing so and so, what do they want to incorporate into their presentation, then there are slides, there is this, there is a quiz. You probably feel like, oh, maybe if I had another 30 seconds. Mm-hmm. So I think it is better if you get into the habit of starting the tape, your mock test tape, and then make sure that you have to experiment with this yourself. Mm-hmm. It is something that I cannot say this is the right advice or this is the wrong advice, but I would say this 90 seconds could be used differently by different people based on their memory, based on their retention, right. And based on their willingness to take some risk, and based on their comfort level. I mean, there are several factors that there are so many variables that I cannot all factor. Right. I cannot factor them all into this discussion.
I just want to highlight that, Madawa, because I think that's an important thing that people should keep in mind, is that there is no silver bullet that works for everybody. You have to experiment with different strategies and find out what works best for you. What is consistently getting you 8.59 on your listening or reading exam, and then just go with that strategy.
Yeah, and also for reading for the first time takers, I have a few. If you're general trainer, general test taker, don't write on your answer sheet. It's not. Don't write on your question sheet. It's not necessary. Once you find the answer, just go directly to your answer sheet.
Right.
So you don't have to write T or F or for false. It's not a lot of time, but it's time nonetheless. Mm-hmm. So make sure that you use your time usefully. And when you are writing true, false, not given, don't try to spend so much time trying to write them neatly, because true is true, and even if you skip the last part of ye is gone, let's say the examiner will understand that it is true.
Right.
So I mean, some standard answers like true, false, not given. So you don't have to carve them. But there are some answers that you need to write clearly. And you need to spend time. And don't use eraser when you're writing your answers, because it takes more time. Just scratch it off. Start from the extreme left of the box and scratch it off, and give room. If you make a mistake, give room and write it on the right hand side. That would be much easier. And I would say that would save a lot of valuable time if you are actually being pressed for time in your reading mock tests.
Yeah, that's good advice. And that just reminds me of another point that a candidate I spoke to brought up regarding spelling. And students sometimes they're worried. I mean, spelling here or there, is it going to matter? And I mean, the majority of the time it won't really, but there are those specific moments when it will. So the example that this candidate was giving was the example of plurals. So for example, if you had a word like car versus cars, and the correct answer is cars, and you write car, well, those are two different things, right? I mean, that sort of spelling mistake will it actually just changes the meaning that you've included in your answer, and that could make the answer incorrect. So that's the sort of instance when spelling would really matter. But as you said, I mean, things like true or false. I mean, if you were to spell those wrong, but at least you start them with the correct letter, I'm sure your examiner would.
It would be more forgiving. You'll have latitude on not carving words. I mean, you can write them You can write them quickly and make sure, and you can be sure that you won't be marked back for not writing neatly. And one more thing, what you said doesn't make really great sense, because there is no chance for you to make a spelling mistake in a reading test, because most of the answers that you are supposed to write, you have to find them.
Actually,
in the text.
Yes, that's true. Sorry, I guess I was maybe referring more to the listening. No, you're right. Yeah, the answers are in the text somewhere. I think it mentions that in the beginning of the preamble of the text.
And that should also act as a feedback. But if there is a fill in the blank that you need to use your creativity, you are definitely wrong about it.
So good point.
So that is an important part. Let's say there is a blank that you want to. I understand the topic. This could be this, but you don't actually see that word anywhere in the text. That's probably a wrong answer.
Right.
That's definitely a wrong answer.
Right.
If that word is not from the text, that's an incorrect answer, because for the reading there is only one correct answer. I mean, there may be slash, but generally there is only one correct answer, and you have to find that correct answer. That word will be there in the text, and you have to find that text.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
So if you are forced to use creativity, then probably you are making a mistake. Reading text. Reading is simply skimming, finding, and answering. Scanning, finding, answering. So it's quite a mechanical process. So you don't really need to use any creativity. Just find the answer that you are looking for. Even if the examiner in the examination, it kind of helps you, because on one side you have the text, on the other side you have the relevant question. So when you open the booklet, you don't have to. You have to flip back and forth. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's like a booklet.
Right.
So on the left-hand side, you have questions. On the right-hand side, you have the text.
Right.
So you don't have to flip back and forth. All you have to do is identify those answers. So the best thing is to read 3 or 4 questions and look for those questions in the first half of the text, and read the remaining 4 questions and look for them in probably the second half of the text.
And I think that you're just highlighting a strategy that Vidit was, I think, one of the first guys that kind of brought that forward, was just go from question to text to question to text to question to text, because the vast majority of the questions are given in sequential order. So if you and actually, so his advice was to go one question at a time. So find one question, and then your advice sounds like to go a couple questions at a time. And I can see the advantage of doing a couple questions at a time, in that if you, for whatever reason, you miss one of the questions in the text, well, you've actually cued yourself for 2 different answers by reading those 2 questions, right? So even if you miss one, you might, I mean, the chances of you missing both is unlikely, but at least you'll be cued, and then you know relatively where the answer is to the one that you missed. So because it should come, somewhere nearby.
So what I say is, like in general reading, for example, if there are 7 questions in section 1, I would say the general strategy that I employ is read 4 questions. Because I have decent memory. I mean, I don't know, I cannot speak on behalf of other people who has very short memory. But I can store at least the keywords in my memory for some time.
Right.
I am looking for those keywords in the first half of the text, and it makes that quite simple for me. And I will be able to. I mean, most of the time, I will be able to answer these 7 questions within 2 minutes.
Okay.
That's because I read the questions, I highlight the keywords, and then I look for the text and I find them, and I don't write the answers in the text. I write them directly in the answer sheet.
I see.
So it's like looking here. I committing 4 questions to my memory, finding them, writing them, committing them, finding them, writing them. So that's a.
And Madawa, do you do any reviewing afterwards, or do you just kind of confidently roll along, and just when they're on the answer sheet, you just let them be? That's what they're going to be, or do you do any kind of going back and reading through the questions if you have time to check if they are?
The last time I have taken the test, a year and a half ago, I had almost 20 minutes to go through the test. Because the first 28 questions, which are based on finding the answers, there is no paragraph. It take me only 15 minutes.
Oh wow!
So the last 12 questions, which are from the passage 3, which is supposed to be the most difficult part in the general reading, it took me about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. So it left me with a good 20 minutes to check my answers.
Wow. Okay.
But yeah, even then I believe I made a mistake, primarily because I was stumped with one question. I was not sure whether I have to go for this or with that. So, but generally you should be able to, if you have time like that, you should be able to get 9 without any problem, in my opinion. So for that, you need to be able to use your time to solve the first 28 questions or 27 questions. And this will come with practice. There is, I would say that you may not be able to develop your skills when it comes to reading and comprehending and answering the questions like you are required to in passage 3. But for the remaining 2 sections, for the remaining 28 questions, it is pretty straightforward. Practice makes perfect. So if you develop a strategy, right kind of strategy to say, okay, this is how I'm going to follow, and this is working for me, you go with the flow, and you make sure that you use your time perfectly. And if you can get those 27 answered in less than like half an hour, so you will have plenty of time to deal with the difficult section, that is section 3, and you will have ample time to verify your answers and be pretty confident that you did a good job.
And how close do you think that third reading is? I mean, some candidates they say that in training for the general, they do actually a lot of academic readings to prepare for that. Academic mock reading tests. To prepare for that third section. Do you think that's a viable strategy for students that are pursuing the general?
It definitely helps. It doesn't hurt really.
Yeah.
But I would say that it's better to read section 3 only. Reading passage 3 only, even in academic test. Because in academic test, the passage 1 and passage 2 are not really that hard. The passages get increasingly difficult.
Right.
So the third passage is at the same level at both academic and at the general level. So you have to read passage 3 and gauge your performance based on passage 3 alone.
I see.
So you cannot say I did very well in passage 1, so I will be able to crack passage 3 in general training. It doesn't work that way.
Another question for you. So what about these candidates that they do passage 3 first? What do you think about that?
I don't know. I think it's a wrong strategy, but I don't know. I mean, if you can manage your time well, it doesn't really matter.
Right.
But I think the passage 1 and 2. If you're general or academic, doesn't matter. Go with the easy ones first. always, I mean, I have written so many examinations in my life. I have taken engineering examinations. Always the strategy is get up, do the easy questions first. So you will have more time to spend on your difficult questions, and you can manage your time.
Okay, let's then. So we've talked about the four different skills. You've shared some very deep insight into how to prepare for them, which I think a lot of people are going to appreciate. Is there anything else that you wanted to share before we move on to the next part of the interview?
Yes, for the speaking part, I know that I have definitely underperformed the last time, so I incorporated some strategies into my speaking, which made me sound more professional and more fluent. I want to discuss a few of them.
Yes, please.
With you. Okay. Yeah, the last time I've taken, I got 7.5. I was really nervous because I had an Australian examiner at the time, and he was quite a grumpy guy. I was really nervous at the time, and I spoke really fast. And I was not using any cohesive connective verbs. Like if I say, "What do you think is the reason why?" Generally, if you ask me a question like that now, I would generally say there are several reasons why this could be so, and then first and foremost, and then I come. In addition to this, there is also a saying that and then finally I will give a concluding statement. So each of the questions in section 3, I usually answer in this format. So I make sure that I incorporate the cohesive forms into my talking, so that the examiner will feel like I am a structured speaker and a proper thinker.
That's definitely a good approach. I think. Yeah, it provides a more well-rounded answer.
And in part 2, it's better to, as I said, everybody knows it's better to take notes and give vocabulary. But most importantly, it's if you could manage your time well. For example, if there is a part of the question that you like to speak more about, you have to refrain from doing so, because you have to touch on all the 4 aspects of the question. And if you do so, then you will have a lot to talk about, and you will be covering majority of the question. A lot of time people they get talkative and they try talking about the same thing while it is only one part of the question. But I recommend that you make sure that you will be finished by the second part. There are 4 parts in speaking part 2. Like there will be a cue card, describe a museum, where it is, how it is located, where you went, who you went with, and what is the most important thing that you like about it. So if there are 4 questions like this, then make sure that you allocate a reasonable amount of time for each part of the question, and don't speak at length for any part of the question, and make sure that you answer all parts of the question.
Did you say don't speak at length, or do speak at length?
No, don't speak at too much length for any part of the question. Like don't spend a minute and a half on one part of the question.
Oh, right, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Speak a maximum of 40 seconds. 40 seconds will constitute about 3 sentences, or 4 complex sentences, or 2 complex, or 3 complex sentences, or 4 simple sentences. So make sure that when you're preparing your notes, you prepare like, I'm going to talk this, and this for this. I'm going to talk this, and this for this. So you make sure that you talk about 40 seconds for each part of the question. That way you will not be, even if you are like short on one of the questions, then you will be able to make up in the final part. Because the final part is quite general. Like, what is the most important thing that you like about it? Why do you think this experience is memorable for you? So this is the part at which you can stretch or you can compress based on the availability of time. So the remaining parts, the remaining 3 questions that are in the cue card, you should answer them, and you should make sure that you speak at least 2 sentences, and you make sure that you use proper grammar. You make sure that you use good vocabulary into these sentences. into these three parts of the question, and then in the final part you can use a little bit of imagination and creativity based on the availability of time. That's the strategy I would recommend for attempting Q card. I mean, because for a lot of people, they don't have any trouble answering questions in section 1 and 3, but they feel difficulty in dealing with section 2. This is my advice for them. And one more thing is, if you are stumped by a question by the examiner, it is always a good idea to speak like a politician. What I mean is for example, the exam, I have taken the test like a week ago, and he asked me, how do you think international law changed in the last few years? Okay, so I first, that's quite a complex question.
Yeah, no kidding. That is.
I don't have any background in political science, international studies, or law in general. So I am afraid I may not respond intelligently to that question. But here we are. So I'm going to come up with a creative and possibly a stupid response.
Okay.
So I said, then I talked about, I think international law, I think it was, earlier it was non-existent because the boundaries were not, I mean, the communication networks were not there, and people across the different countries, they did not communicate with each other properly. So there need not be any law on how to address the global issues like global warming, or how to build trade relations, etc., etc. So, but now I think because of internet and the communication networks being simplified, we are able to. We need to embrace a common law. We need to incorporate into our system a common thinking, and this this is demanding all the cultures to accept a common law when it comes to dealing with the issues like environmental issues, because they concern everybody equally. So I came up with an answer like that. I would say that it is not the perfect answer, but at the same time, when someone asks you a question that you are completely unfamiliar with, you should come up with an answer like a politician. Like, what I'm saying is, you have to beat around the bush a little bit, and saying that by doing that, you have demonstrated that you are able to speak at length, and you are able to use proper vocabulary. For example, if say, what do you think of so and so, and how do you think it will affect XYG, for example? If there is a question like that, which is kind of common question in section 3, you say, you can say, to be honest, I've never really thought about it, but if you're asking me for my honest opinion, I must say I agree. So you have spoken like for 40 seconds, but you have not given an answer yet. So by speaking like this, instead of saying, I don't know really, maybe let me think. So instead of doing all this, I would say, come up with like a sentence like that. So that's not something that I'm really familiar with, but let me think about it. If you're asking me for my honest opinion, I have to say yes. So even if you were unable to say why it is yes, you should be given proper credit. You would be given proper credit on your English.
Yes.
Because after all, this is an English examination. This is not something that demonstrates whether you have an opinion about everything or not. No, the examiner is willing to test your skills. So as long as you understand the question and you know that you don't have a good answer for it, so you have to come up with vocabulary to cover it up.
Right.
So that's what my recommendation is. Like, people who get stumped at an examination, don't just look blank. and don't use fillers too much, like yeah, but no,
Right,
no,
right.
it is not a good idea to do this, because the examiner gets bored of it, he gets sick of it, because he would have been listening to this for all his life probably,
Yep.
and it's not a good idea to bore him.
Right.
So
Yeah.
just
The other thing
speak
too,
some.
though, yeah, no matter what, I just want to cut in for a second, because the other thing, though, is that when candidates start to do that, they run a risk. They run the risk of the examiner thinking that they don't actually know what to say, like it's an unhealthy pause. Because I mean, it could be that, like you said, I mean, maybe the candidate is just trying to think of me, what the heck is my opinion on this subject, and it's not really a reflection of their English, but they pause for too long, and then the examiner misinterprets that and thinks, well, look, I mean, it's taking them so long to come up with an answer that is maybe an indication that their English is not quite as brushed up as it could be. So I think you're right that it's good to know these colloquialisms that can act to an extent as sort of, for lack of a better word, a filler for these periods of time when you really don't know what you're going to say, and then allow you to sort of roll into an answer that is framed with the honest position that you're not completely sure. I mean, like,
I am not sure of the topic in hand, and the examiner should realize that talking about international law is not something that everybody should be familiar with.
mm-hmm.
In the IELTS examination, I was actually in my examination a week ago, I was really surprised and shocked to see those kind of questions in my exam. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I mean, I was thinking, like, what kind of law do you have for this? What kind of law do you have in your country for this? What do you get? I mean, do you get arrested if you do this? Something like that I was expecting.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, international law. But I never. Even after he asked me that question, I didn't stay silent, or I didn't go into a deep thinking mode. I was able to speak. I was able to say that that's a really complicated question, because I am from an engineering background, and I have to confess that my knowledge on this subject is very limited, and I am not familiar or interested in international law or politics. So I am afraid I may not be able to give an intelligent answer for this question. I have spoken at almost for 40 seconds, and that's exactly the time you are required to speak for a question. So I didn't know anything about that question. I didn't even understand the basic about it, but I demonstrated to the examiner, hell with what you are asking. I have demonstrated that I was speaking clearly.
And then, of course, you did share something that responded, to what they were asking. But I think what your point is, as you're making before, is that you've just demonstrated that you are capable of operating in an environment where, and it happens to all people, it happens to native speakers of any language, where you're asked a question, you actually don't know that much about it, and that's not a mistake. It's like you pointed out, I mean, that you're not an expert on everything. So it's just the fact that you were able to control that, and using your English, you're able to control that situation and frame it into a way that allowed you to continue the communicative process with the examiner.
Yeah, and the other one, there is another video on internet that I saw recently. It was about packaging your response, like as I have mentioned before, like a couple of minutes ago. That's an interesting question, but I have to confess that I have really no idea about it. But if you're asking me for my honest opinion, I must have to side with blah 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 blah. So you can say these words. You can remember some of these. It's not a bad thing, bad idea. And when you're practicing an examination with your friend, or when you're trying to improve your speaking, I think this is a good idea, a good strategy to follow if you are faced with a very difficult question, very unfamiliar topic or so. You should be able to package it. You should be able to speak at least 2 sentences on it. You are better off speaking meaningful, grammatically structured, complex sentences in the examination, rather than giving relevant one-word answers. So you examiner, there is no right answer, there is no wrong answer here. And you have to remember that as long as you know that, the examiner is going to respond, is going to evaluate your English speaking. And as long as you speak around the question, that should also be okay. You don't have to. It's not like a task response. It's not like a writing task, and you have to attempt that. You have to give proper argument for it. It's not like that. In speaking, you have more latitude. And what I mean is, even if you're not familiar with a particular topic, you should be able to speak at it. You don't have that luxury when you are attempting the writing test.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so when you should be familiar. Like when somebody is asking you in a writing test, you should know that. Like you are expected as an English speaker to know basic things, and most of the essays or basic questions. They don't test your deeper knowledge about animal testing or anything complex.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, they're quite broad, aren't they? And that allows the student to I should say the candidate, not necessarily the student, but that allows the candidates to tailor the response to an area that they understand. Like it could be something about education, and then if you were an individual from India, then you could use perhaps examples and draw conclusions from things that happen in India.
Yeah, but the same strategy you need not apply. May not be necessarily true. A lot of people try to answer the question and make sure that they make sense about it. I mean, it is important to make sense about it, but it is not really as important as being able to speak and respond fluently. You have to make a trade-off sometimes between these two.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know, Madawa, would you be comfortable talking a little bit about your experiences with these initial ideas that you're having regarding immigrating to Canada?
My knowledge about Canada immigration, I would say it's very new and it's quite limited.
It sounds like the sort of response you give. You were just telling us about in part two. You can use a lot of that language right now.
No. I mean, I'm being honest here. I mean, see, I have been really busy lately, and I haven't been able to invest any time in doing some background research on Canada immigration. But I think it's a great opportunity for people who are willing to pursue engineering careers or teaching careers in Canada, because those are the only things that I'm interested in. So, whatever vague knowledge that I have is only limited to these fields.
So where are you getting your information from? Is it mainly from the Government of Canada websites, or is there a forum you can suggest or other resources regarding getting information on immigrating to Canada?
Yeah, I just typed into Google Canada immigration, and there are a bunch of official websites that it leads to. And so you can... you should be able to get the basic information. I don't think any website will will intentionally give wrong information.
Yeah.
They may target some marketing, like they may say this is a good consultancy service, but they will never give you incorrect information. So you just type in Google Canada immigration, probably points calculation, something like that. They should they should be able to give you enough information. For example, Canada immigration, they look for work experience. If you have more than 4 years of work experience, you go into a certain band of points. And if you have a PhD, you go into a certain band of points. And if you have language skills which are more than, let's say, if you score 8 or more on in your IELTS, probably you'll get 16 points. That's how I think they're going to grade. I think it depends. So these are the 3 criteria, and from age 20 to 49. From age 20 to 49, you fall into the same age band, which is quite in contrast with the immigration rules for Australia, where the age bands are quite narrow.
I see.
Here age from 20 to 49, it's just the same. You are in the same pool. So in the acceptable pool, you get 10 points for it. So it depends on your other skills, actually, your English skills. If you could also speak French, that would be great, because it will add to your points in the language. And it definitely helps you to have work experience. If you did work for 3 or 4 years, make sure that you get a decent certificate of experience from your employer. And if you have education degrees, make sure that they are properly attested and they are in acceptable form for an international application. So what I mean is it should be in proper language, in English language. And sometimes I am not familiar with this, but you can find it out in by visiting their website, what kind of documents are acceptable, what are the relevant parts of the particular document. For example, if you are giving a work experience document, you probably need to include your salary, your date of your job, what your job entails, probably in 3 or 4 sentences, and any achievements you got at your job, something like that. Like I think it is the standard procedure that majority of the countries follow for letting immigrants into their countries. Australia, New Zealand, and Canada. I think they're not quite different from each other.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Well, I am interested to hear the experiences that people have had with it. I know that you're kind of in the early stages of it at the moment, but it does tend to, not always, but deviate a little bit from what's officially listed. People find these different opportunities, these paths, and these sorts of things. So at the moment, I'm just trying to collect as many stories as I can about people immigrating to Canada or to Australia or whatever, and how other people can apply the same strategies to their ambitions. But okay, well, Madawa, I think we've covered a tremendous range of topics. You covered a tremendous range of topics. I want to thank you very much for coming on the show, for talking with me, for sharing all of this information with people all over the world that are striving to get IELTS bands similar to yours. So a resounding thank you to you for your time and for coming on the show.
Okay, thank you very much, Ryan. I'm really honored to be able to speak with you because I respect you very much for your input, and I believe that your inputs definitely had a great impact on me, and I'm sure they are going to be reflected in my next IELTS score, which I'm expecting in a week or so.
Thank you for downloading from IELTS.com. Have you achieved an overall band of 7 or higher on the IELTS exam? Why not contribute to the podcast? Contact Ryan at his blog, IELTS.com,